And there's one. And there's two.
I'm sitting here doing my conjuring.
And finally, here is the third of these trios champions of ours. Welcome, everybody, to episode 171 of the greatest paranormal talk show you'll ever hear in your entire existence with the three greatest.
271?
271. So, we might not, it might not be as great as some of these dreams people have during the nighttime, but,
You have dreams?
Sometimes. Anyways, you all know us. I am Solomon. Next to me is, in fact, there it is, Spider, and below us, under here.
That's easy because my camera doesn't do this, so I could just be like,
Right.
Yeah, my camera does the weird
Steven.
thing where my hands disappear.
As you can tell, he is actually he's not around right now. He's actually in space.
Yep.
How he keeps doing this is beyond me. Hello, James. Welcome. Today we'll be talking about Antarctica. So what's been going on? What happened while I was gone last week? What did you two fellers get up to?
We talked about the multiverse and how it relates to Kingdom Hearts.
Oh,
there was a little bit of that, yeah. We did some Mandela effect stuff, and because we've talked about that before on the show. We've had a few things. And there were some new things. And one thing I didn't even get to mention, but I was going to. And I'm going to throw it out now just to make sure I don't forget.
Please do.
Another thing that I recall doing is on the Spirits Club. I know for a fact that certain things have had tasting videos done, but they're nowhere on my YouTube anywhere.
You bring something funny. So I used to have an old gaming channel with Wecos Jones. Everybody knows, you know what I'm talking about. And we made videos. We record them. They can't be found on YouTube.
I remember that.
I
remember you guys were like getting that started, and then it's like they existed. They 100% existed, and they weren't deleted because you'd get the messages from YouTube if they were deleted.
No, that's
or whatever.
not necessarily true. I think YouTube shadow deletes.
That's possible. That is possible. Although I don't think you guys would have gotten hit with that, would you?
Oh.
Well.
Oh.
Wait, who am I talking about? Here? Wait,
you have no idea exactly.
Let me walk that back a little bit, like a politician at a press conference.
Probably should 100%, or just apologize for it later. That's what they all do, anyways, right? They do that.
Well, that's not what I meant at the time in context. So
just give him some spicy milk. He'll be fine.
He'll be. He's lactose tolerant.
Yeah.
Gotta have tolerant for the lactose now.
Yeah.
That's gonna be the latest. That's gonna be the latest thing. Tolerate lactose.
I'm not gonna do it.
How far did you guys go into multiverse theory? How far did you dig in on that one?
Well, we had.
go ahead.
We had an article that I'd posted, which I know Steven here was super interested in. It's in the Uncanny group if anybody wants to go back and take a look, about how a current theory, not yet proven, just in the theory stages, is that multiple universes, some are going to be bigger and smaller than others, but they're constantly buttoned against each other. And occasionally a larger one will absorb a smaller one, and how that could potentially explain some Mandela effect, because merging of one with the other causes certain people's memories to merge, and their brain has to pick one or the other. You can't exist in a paradox with multiple memories of the same event. So one takes precedence, but it's the one from the other universe, not the one from here.
And speaking of the multiverse and how our universe might be swallowing other universes, I was actually talking about that with one of my friends today. And we actually had this idea that what if that was the inspiration for Galactus?
It's a good point. It's a good
Yeah.
point. What is the
And
what
yes,
is
you may,
what
James.
what is in fact the inspiration for his herald, though? Who is the inspiration for his Herald Silver Surfer?
That is a good question. UFOs. I suggest UFOs and aliens.
Okay. Well, Silver Surfer is basically an alien.
Yeah.
So you're not too far off. That's a good point. See? Comics mirror reality in more ways than we think. We could also attribute to some of this from the firing of the Hadron Collider A lot of folks speculate that we actually jumped realities when that thing was first fired, and then we jumped again when it was last summer, a year ago.
Yes,
back in 2023. It was
because time has been messed up ever since.
Sped up, so to speak.
I feel like time.
I will say that time does speed up at a weird interval, but we would have to sit. I would like if we're going to go in on this rabbit hole of time increases, I would like to get some older folks, some folks like our parents or even their parents, and sit down and ask them if as they aged, time increases. And the only reason that we as children felt time going slow is because we didn't have a concept or a base concept of what time really was, because we didn't have jobs, we didn't have doctor's appointments we had to go to, we didn't have to do all these things. I mean, I don't say kids don't have to go to doctor's appointments, but you get my point. You didn't have to be like, well, yeah, next Tuesday, because cats don't. They don't have a perception of time. That cat doesn't. I know it doesn't. The only time it cares
just got a perception of food and scratching.
That's it. Feeding time.
Time is a fabrication of mankind as we know it.
Well, no. The thing with time is time would not. Time exists, but to us it's numbers. But to reality, it's gravity.
Linear, right?
It's gravity. Gravity is the time. To be honest, because if we all woke up tomorrow morning and said we're not going to go by time anymore, we're just going to get rid of time, we would still age. We would still decay. See, there you go. See, here's James saying, yeah, I'm over 50, and yeah, time seems to go faster. Because we are inundated, I believe personally, we're inundated by a society where we are told that we have to meet production quotas, we have to meet results, we have to continuously provide, we have to be on time. We are straight told that we are, in fact, stated as to you got to show up to work at this time. Why is it that when you're at work seems to go by slower, but when you're off time seems to go by faster? Because in your off time, you're not stuck watching a clock. You're not waiting to move on to the next cycle of whatever it is you're doing. You're just having fun. Time is immeasurable to you at that point. You're playing your games, or you're reading a book, or you're hanging out with your friends. Yeah. Then time seems to be in a speed warp. But when you work, why doesn't time go faster at the job site? We would all love for time to go faster while we're at work, while we're doing a work, or we're doing a thing that we don't want to do. We all want time to jump forward, you know? But then when we're having fun, we're like, man, I just did this a week ago. It's been a week since I have done this. Or it's been almost a year since this has happened. You see what I'm saying? Because they're good times. But in the hard times, time goes slower. So I have to wonder if it isn't a firing of a scientific piece of equipment, and it's more of us being led down a road of do this by this time, do this by this time, and we get so functioning to the point of we have to do this at this time. Like the show, we have the show at 10 o'clock tonight. You all have to be here at 10 o'clock tonight, right? And so creeps up on you. But it's a fun show. So the show's going to be over before we know it.
Unless you're me, and then you got to be here at 9:30 and wait for everybody else to set the room up.
I didn't know we had jokes. I didn't know we were coming in hot with jokes.
I'm always early all the time. Like,
I wasn't here last week. I wasn't here last week.
I would actually be curious to study the psychology behind that as well.
I am not. I am here, but I'm in limbo. So that's how that is. Very limbo. So, but I would love to see if, in fact,
can you go?
I would love to see, in fact, that's the case. Because I would like to see somebody else from another side of the world, older, that doesn't live under our same paradigms or our same rules, be put through the same questionnaire and see if time goes by as fast for them. Did time goes by as fast for the Native Americans? Did time go by as fast for the Aztecs and the Incans and the Mayans when they really didn't have a society where everything was ruled over by time?
It's been too long since we had a dad joke, so I just wanted to say, Rob, I appreciate that I see you repping your hood over there. Yeah.
Skipping
Well, if
over
you're not
that,
gonna do
we're just gonna
There
add
we
that.
go. Anyways, back to our show today.
Now you know how I feel.
Yeah.
Um,
I think I just got fired.
um, considering like people in like African countries, a lot of times, if you're out, like there's still a lot of tribal people out that way. And that's not to say they don't have modern things like electricity and whatnot, because that's the thing across the world now. But there's still a lot of people that don't go by that. So even if they have cell phones now, they don't look at the time all the time. They look up at the sky, say, okay, the sun's up there. I got this much time in the day. It doesn't matter what the number says on their phone. It doesn't matter about any of that. They know what time of day it is by whatever, natural stuff, because that's how they've always grown up. And we take that for granted here, because here we've got clocks everywhere. We've got stuff telling us the time everywhere you look. You got computers, you got the tablets, you got the phones, you got whatever, you got actual clocks, watches, whatever. And they don't have that over there. And they don't care. They're not like, we better have these clocks to find out what time it is. Nobody cares. They're just like, whatever. I can see what time it is, and I got this much time left.
And they don't care that it's 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. They're like, we don't care if it's 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. We don't care if it's 7, 8,
I'm
or
hungry.
9.
It's breakfast time,
Right. And that's the point. There is that we govern everything by a specific time, as to where they govern everything by more of a passage of time. Okay, the sun is in this part of the earth. We only have this much daylight left. We have to get these crops harvested, or we have to get these crops watered, or we have to do this. We have to get this done. We have to be at this place by the time the sun gets here, or we won't make it to camp. We won't make it to safety. That, like Spider said, they did theirs more of a quadrant-esque than being like, oh, it's 5:57.
Yeah.
Same thing in the Middle East.
If I don't get there by 6, I'm gonna get in trouble. I'm gonna get a fine. I'm gonna get a late.
I like that. It sounds like it's more peaceful, just more relaxed and calm.
Maybe it is, but we won't know that unless you move to Africa. And it's not that I wouldn't enjoy going to Africa, but I don't think it's a place I'd like to live. It's very hot. It's a very hot place. I'd like to visit, but don't know if I'd want to live there. Don't know if I'd live anywhere that's annoyingly hot.
Well, that's because you got to have your white Christmas, not like white skin Christmas. I mean, you got to have your snow Christmas.
You didn't have to say none. People would have got it. You didn't have to.
Sometimes you do, because somebody out there would be like, he just was talking about Africa. He said, so I got to make sure people know it's because of snow.
They're gonna think that we're part of a. They're gonna think that we're part of a political party.
I gotta ask.
Hey, I don't want them to think that. No, sir.
Nah.
Why is the
I can't anyways. It's against my people to be of doing any of that. So I cannot. I would be excommunicated, but not excommunicated, whatever they would call that.
Excommunicado.
No, because I'm not Catholic and I'm not of the church. So I couldn't be you can't be excommunicated from a place you don't go to.
I was making a John Wick joke.
The Continental, I see.
Yeah.
I see what you did there. I see what you did there, Broham. Now the question, that's a good question, because the Amish are another sort of folk like that. We don't even have to go to Africa. We can literally just drive 45 minutes south of us. Well, probably for Spider.
Or even east, because Pennsylvania Dutch.
Or east, and they don't use clocks. Mm-hmm. Same basic concept. Now, funny thing, the Mennonites, they use clocks because they can use electricity. They're allowed to have the electricity that the Amish aren't. And the Amish are very odd people. We'll do an episode on the Amish here at some point. I think that'd be a good viewpoint, because once again, folks, the uncanny just doesn't apply to the spiritual and the paranormal. It applies to groups of people. We talked about cults before. There was no paranormal going on there. There was just some folks that were cults. So, anyways, I just wanted to clear it up with what you guys talked about last week. I heard you guys had a visitor. You had an uncanny ambassador stop by and say, "Hey, that's cool. That's cool. I'm glad that
that was fun.
That he stopped by. I'm glad my employees. I mean, sorry. James,
my wage slaves.
My wage slaves. I'm sorry, my wage slaves that I do not pay. Mind you, I don't pay these guys. We're on task, because if they weren't, they would have paid this show. No,
I'm
you
just
guys did a fine
obsessed.
job. You guys did a fine job, and I'm very proud of you guys. I wasn't watching to be like, oh, they're not living up to my expectations. I just like to
Mr.
check in every
Scrooge
now
over
and again.
here.
It did help. It did help having our correspondent here upgraded in his status to official co-host for the day.
Don't get comfortable in it. Do not get comfortable in that position, son. Don't get comfortable because look, hey, we're all laughing and joking.
Yeah.
You're fired. That's all that takes. That's all that takes.
Yep.
Pink slip.
Pink slip. You can get the pink slip.
His pinky slipped on the button to fire me.
That's right.
Oh, okay. If you want to fire him, you can. You know you can fire him too. You know you're allowed to fire him as well.
Having been at the end of several firings, I think I'll.
Yep.
And how would this person know that I was listening definitely for expectations?
Were they great expectations? Or was
they were Charles Dickens
the
expectations.
Dickens?
The Dickens.
The greatest.
The Dickens.
Oh, Joe. There was like 3 Joes in that damn play, which I did. I did that play actually in high school. I did Great Expectations.
I did not. I did Schoolhouse Rocks, where I was the son.
That's because he was so angsty. They said, "Go stand over there." And
I had to wear a yellow shirt and everything and stand there and like.
Nice.
I called it. If anybody has footage out there of that, send it to me.
I'm
not gonna. I swear I will not blackmail him. I swear I would not.
I don't know. It was YouTube was a thing back then, but it was so early in the days. I don't know if it's like the YouTube landscape was different. We didn't have Facebook. We had MySpace.
Oh yeah, you could. I made my own playlist on MySpace. My playlist was fire. It was fire. Anyways, tonight we discuss Antarctica. We have discussed Antarctica on previous shows, so it doesn't hurt to go back and maybe listen to some of our early episodes. However, now that we have our new correspondent here, no longer co-host, you have been demoted. I'm kidding.
Limited time only.
Yeah. Hope you enjoyed it. Don't be plotting to take over my show. All right. Don't do that. Don't plot to take over.
He'll freak out and then he'll blame you for the next 5 years.
And I'll go through 3 rebrandings before it'll actually stick. But it won't stick. It won't stick because those rebrandings don't work. Anyways, that's definitely not a shot across the bow.
2 and jokes all in one segment.
Let's talk about this.
Let's talk. Well, you can't. Whoa!
Hey.
You gotta be careful. We gotta be careful. Hey, yo.
Yeah. It's a good reference.
What are they going to sue us for?
That's Spider Show.
Hire a lawyer.
He's got the reference, though. He's got the reference. Yeah, he's been following along.
What are they going to do? Call a lawyer? They can't even afford one.
He's been paying attention in class. Yeah. That's what he's been doing.
That's why we keep him around. Antarctica, New Schwabenland, as the Nazis so eloquently called it, is a nice range of land down south. And I'm not talking down south like Alabama or even where our good friend here is from, Tennessee, or even Florida. Heck, I'm not even talking about Peru with Chichen Itza. No, I'm talking south of Argentina. Matter of fact, if you go to the tip of Argentina, you can see Antarctica from across the way. Now, Antarctica is home to absolutely nothing. It is a frozen tundra. There's some penguins, though. There'll be some penguins, and I love penguins, so they're cool little animals. But the interesting fact about Antarctica is multiple countries own stakes in different parts of Antarctica. Now, if it was just a frozen tundra, why would you want to own multiple stakes in a frozen tundra? You could own multiple stakes here in Ohio. It's pretty much a frozen tundra from certain parts of the year. However, like I've stated previous and prior, there have been times, 14 countries. We have Deadpool in the chat. I have no idea who that is. Wow, that's pretty cool. We got Deadpool chat. That's cool. Hey, Deadpool, how you doing, buddy?
I was trying not to interrupt you.
No, you're fine.
30 countries.
30 countries.
Oh, wow.
Antarctica is governed by 30 countries.
Oh, wow.
And they even have religion in Antarctica, believe it or not.
Oh, yeah. Russian Orthodox.
Russian Orthodox.
Could you tell us about that treaty in a bit more detail?
Well, I will say this, first of all, before he continues, and I don't mean to interrupt.
That's what I was wanting to mention.
The only religious buildings on the continent are, in fact, Christian churches that are used for Christian worship. And the Chapel of the Snows has also been used for Buddhist and Baha'i faith ceremonies. Nice. And some of them are early religious locations, and they're protected as important historical monuments. Something to keep in mind as we move forward. Anyways, please continue.
The Antarctic Treaty System, which is what we're referring to here, it regulates the international relations with respect to Antarctica. And it was established during the Cold War, and it says that it designates the continent as a scientific preserve, establishing freedom of scientific investigation and banning military activity, which includes nuclear testing. It's no military bases, no anything related to weapons cannot be there. And it's established by the Antarctic Treaty Secretariat as of September 2004, which is based in Argentina. And it is, let's see, it was established in 1959 and then officially entered into force in 1961. It did start with 12 countries, so you were close with your numbers first off. And it's advanced to, as of 2023, the treaty has 56 parties.
Oh, wow.
Not all of those are countries. Some of those are organizations or municipalities or things, but at least 30 countries individually are on board with this, and a lot of them include the big ones that don't always have a lot of agreement with each other, like the United States, the Soviet Union, which is an interesting point, because every article I found states the Soviet Union. But if the Soviet Union is now collapsed for a good number of years, does that automatically include all of those countries that were part of it? Or is that now kind of an outlier? It doesn't say specifically Russia and whatnot.
My only rebuttal to all of that I could come up with is that contract could not be changed, or that treaty cannot be changed. So because that treaty cannot be changed, they probably mean Russia as Russia. Like, they probably meant it to where whatever is still mainland Russia.
Right. Grandfathered in, kind of.
And that doesn't mean that like Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, all those countries aren't Russia oriented, and that's an island, but Russia would be considered the mainland Russia. So like you're talking Moscow would be the headquarters of probably where that treaty is stored. And so they're probably like, yeah, we're going to keep the treaty in, because the capital of Russia has it, it's when Russia broke apart, Russia was still Moscow. It didn't change to something else. It didn't change to something in Turkmenistan.
And that's how I would usually interpret it. It's just an interesting point, too, that the article doesn't say anything. But it is Wikipedia, and Wikipedia is not 100% always.
No. You got to have a backup to Wikipedia.
Always look at your sources, but it's a good starting point. And when I talked about the military activity, it says, according to the terms of the treaty, it bans military activity, mining, nuclear explosions, and nuclear waste disposal. So you can't even just drop things up there because it's far away from people. It's just a no-go. Now, what I found interesting, too, is they ban the mining, and they say that a lot of it is because there's a lack of materials there anyway. But because of reasons we'll get into later, maybe that's because most of those materials have already been mined in the distant past, and there's not much left there. But that's theorization.
Or the materials that they are mining for are in fact not materials at all, but rather something otherworldly,
such as the Ark of Gabriel.
Which I am interested to know what that is. Please, by all means,
let's hear it.
Let's hear it. Let's go. Let's run to it.
Our good friend James over here mentioned the Ark of Gabriel in the Russian Orthodox Church. And I don't know so much about the Russian Orthodox Church, so maybe James could enlighten us on that in the chat here in a second. But what I do know about the Ark of Gabriel is essentially it's very similar to the Ark of the Covenant, and it was supposedly had something to do with the Spear of Destiny, I believe. And what they claim is they say that it could convert solid matter, like anything as simple as an apple, into energy that could be used. And maybe James could give us a bit more details on that.
He asked us, he said, can we see his explanation? No, James, we cannot see your explanation. We cannot see that. I'm sorry.
As we've talked about before on the show, not to get too far afield, but the Spear of Destiny was a focus of Nazi artifact collection because it was supposedly the Roman spear used by one of the Roman guards at the crucifixion to stab the side of Christ, which is mentioned in many biblical texts. And because of that, it received a little bit of the essence of Christ. It wasn't a blessing per se, but it became an object of power. And supposedly, whoever had the spear in their possession was supposed to be undefeatable in war or in conquest. And then the Nazis supposedly have it, but then they supposedly lost it, which is why they lost the war.
Now, the person who had the spear was a Roman centurion by the name of Gaius Cassius Longinus. He's the one who had the spear that pierced the side of Christ at the crucifixion. Now, you can go and read the crucifixion, but it is further on, and when he pierces it, bile comes out because it's just, that's all he's been. Christ wasn't given water to drink; he was given vinegar, and so it's a whole thing. But supposedly the spear was found in a museum. Hitler said, I'm going to get it one day, and I'm going to go ahead and do this and do that with it. And they broke into the museum, took the Spear of Destiny, had the Spear of Destiny, and supposedly once the war started turning to the Allies' favor is when the Spear of Destiny was lost. And it is said it was lost in transportation. They were moving it somewhere else, probably somewhere that Hitler was going to bunker up, maybe even to the Eagle's Nest in Austria, and it got lost. And you have to wonder if that is the case, and it did get lost, was that divine intervention saying, okay, your time, you can't, you're not worthy of it. And if that is in fact the case, who is wielding it now? Who has it now?
That's another common theme with artifacts like this too. Like a lot of times, even in some of our stories and some of our movies and things, like Lord of the Rings kind of thing. If you have the ring, you have this ultimate power, but the ring has a mind of its own and it seeks out others. And supposedly, with all artifacts like this, they only stick around for as long as you're worthy of it, and then if you're not, they abandon you.
And Indiana Jones.
Yeah. Yeah, the Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah, I've heard that they have the most accurate, according to the descriptions in the Spear of Destiny book.
The interesting aspect of the Ark of the Covenant and Raiders of the Lost Ark is, see what the Ark was. It was a way for the Jews to commune with God because the Jews and everybody else were imperfect. Once you cross that threshold of trying to become godly before you were ready, because the Bible never says if mankind would have gotten to partake of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. It just says they couldn't partake in it at present, right? And so because they partook of it too early, they were doomed. And so because they became imperfect, they couldn't be around a perfect thing. It's kind of like if you have two people, you have the same person, the same matter cannot occupy the same place at the same time. So you couldn't have imperfection and perfection in the same place at the same time. So what the Ark of the Covenant did was it allowed the Jews to actually commune with God via this box, almost the size of. You get the measurements in the Old Testament. I'm not sure. I have to look up the measurements of myself, but it was basically like a box. It was a chest. Yes, it was a chest. It was basically a chest, and it would contain the 10 Commandments. It would contain the spear of Moses that was thrown down at Pharaoh's feet when the snakes were fighting. And I believe there's something else, and I think manna from heaven was also put. Manna was the food that was given the Jews while they roamed the desert, looking for a place after Exodus when they were exiled to the desert to roam for 40 years. Manna was dropped down from heaven so they could eat. And so these things are placed in this chest, but it was also used to commune with God, and they had to have temple priests carry it via rods. Nobody could touch it. You couldn't touch it. If God was in it, you couldn't touch it. And a good chunk of that time, God was in it. And there's a reason why the Philistines took it. You had all these outside tribes that came in and took it, which is a running theme. They would take it to their place, and they would rule. They, they weren't destroyed because they were not Jews. So they didn't have to live by the same rules that were given to the Jews. They were a whole other different tribe. They were a whole different people. And so this ark gets taken from place to place to place until finally it's either A, taken back up to heaven, God takes it, B, it is removed via Solomon's son, Menelik the first. Menelik comes up, that's the Queen of Sheba's child, the Queen of Sheba, and Solomon, that's their child. So he comes up, he says, "Okay, Dad, he knows, he recognizes." So he takes the ark and dips. Well, he gets far enough down, nobody knows he's taking it except him. His men find out. They say, "Well, if you were able to take it, that means God wanted you to have it." Suppose it ends up in Axum, which is in Ethiopia. They've said that it's not there, that it could be anywhere. Or the last one, it got destroyed. Because if you don't need it anymore, if God's not there anymore, you don't need it. So the Gabriel Ark is used to talk to angels like the fallen angels, which I have hypothesized that if we look at the book of Enoch and we dig into the first book, not the second or the third, the first book, and we get into the prospect of the concept of fallen angels residing in the earth, as it talks about in First Enoch, where they were sent. They were chained up. Raphael chains up. I believe it's Azazel. Because he's the worst. And it's weird because Semyaz is the one who plots to come down to earth to have intercourse with human women, but it's Azazel that teaches mankind how to go to war. And he is viewed as the worst of the bunch. So if you read First Enoch, he's the one that they basically throw into the earth. And so they chain him into the earth. Now, what I find to be particularly fascinating is if anybody's ever read Dante's Inferno, and bear with me, I am going somewhere with this. The ninth circle, or the final circle of hell, isn't hot. It's ice cold. Yeah. Because betrayal is one of the coldest things you could do to a person. That's why in the hands and in the mouth of Satan, or in the mouth, of course, is Judas Iscariot, the man who betrayed Christ. Cassius, who betrayed Caesar, and Brutus, who also betrayed Caesar. And Brutus and Cassius are in one hand, and then you have Judas Iscariot in Satan's mouth. And
constantly being chewed on, not ever being completely eaten, but those constantly being chewed on.
It's like a horror story.
And he's buried in half sheet of ice. He's buried in this thick sheet of ice.
From the midway down, only his top half is out, give or take, just based on the description in the text.
And the art, and whoever does the art. Unless you play Dante's Inferno, then I don't know if any of y'all played it.
It was fun, but it was weird.
It was that it part.
It was fun, but weird.
Yeah. I'm like, hey, get your,
Yeah.
But before that, a lot of people like to point to that part of Satan holding Cassius, Brutus, and Judas Iscariot. But there's a part before that when he is walking with Virgil, and they're walking on the ice, and they look down and they see all of these people trapped in the ice. Well, every person that has been trapped in the ice was a betrayer of some form and of some fashion. Now, a lot of folks point to the Divine Comedy as being more of a satirical poke at both the government and the church structure of Italy during the time. However, I find it interesting that if you put something deep enough, bury it in cold enough places, it freezes. It doesn't kill it. It doesn't kill it, mind you. Especially if you put a fallen being in the earth and freeze it, it's not going to kill it. And so, in my estimation, and this is just hypothetical, don't go run into your local internet. I don't know if they're local. your local internet and steer. Don't be like, hey Sarah, connect me to 0. That boy Robert's been off his rocker again.
Operator,
connect me to Jim at 2. But it's interesting when you read through the Divine Comedy. But then you also read that the worst form of treachery is betrayal, and we have betrayal throughout. Betrayal is a common theme in the Old and the New Testament, and betrayal is a common theme in life. You're said to be cold-hearted if you betray your friends. Not warm-hearted. Your heart's not on fire. You wouldn't be in a pit burning. You'd be in a pit freezing. It's cold. And Antarctica is one of the coldest places on the planet. One of the coldest areas. And the deeper you go into, obviously you hit a certain point. Obviously, the core of the earth would be hot. But the deeper you go, the colder it's going to be because you're not close to the sun. So, and James brings up some interesting point. The fallen taught.
Yeah.
Yes, you can read it. It taught makeup. It taught science, magic, astrology, and not like, oh, I'm an asparagus. No, it taught like how to divine stars to make plans via the moon, the sun, the shifting of planets, things like that. War. This is interesting. The Nazis contacted the fallen, and then the Allies are doing the same for technology. Interesting point to bring up in all of this is that if we look in who the United States brought over for their rocket program, their rocket programs, their rocket.
There's a rocket in my pocket. It's the devil.
The rocket.
This is what I've been excited for.
Their rocket programs. Who did they bring over? Werner von Braun, a Nazi, diehard party member. They brought over the smartest men they could because they didn't want the Soviets to get them. Instead of putting these people to the gallows like they should have. If I would have been, you can't let them live. You can't let the lower Nazis live, right? You can't let people like Goering and all of them live, right? But then you let Werner von Braun live just because you want the information. I don't know. They left detailed information. You could have figured it out, and it's so weird because if anybody's seen the
James knows everything.
The Oppenheimer movie, right? The Oppenheimer movie in and of itself has Werner von Braun in it. The dots are connecting, Mason. The numbers, what do they mean?
The numbers.
I'll get off my Antarctic high horse there for my Antarctic box, if you will. It's freezing my feet. But the hypothesis that I have is, why would you have so many people over there unless the only other outside source that I would have is that Antarctica wasn't always a frozen tundra, and it was in fact a lush green landscape, much like the Sahara was at one time. Anyways, by all means, gentlemen, continue.
I know Steven probably has something that he's been waiting on. So what do you got for us next?
You can tell.
Oh, back when Spider was talking about the peace treaty, it actually reminded me of something called Operation Argus, which was a series of United States low-yield, high-altitude nuclear weapons tests and missile tests secretly conducted from the 27th of August to the 9th of September 1958 over the South Atlantic Ocean. And to summarize it, basically what they did is they launched a nuclear weapon into the ionosphere, and they said they just wanted to see what would happen.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. They just wanted to see what would happen. And I was curious if that was considered to have broken the treaty.
Now that's interesting too, because we have a lot of separate ways of how countries designate what's sovereign and what isn't. A lot of times airspace within a certain range is sovereign over a certain country.
Yeah.
Like if you go over a certain area, it's United States airspace, and you can't just go through it.
So it's a loophole.
Right.
Yeah, you got to get clear.
But there could be spots over the ocean.
Yeah.
That could be free of that. There could be spots over Antarctica that might not include that necessarily, because Antarctica isn't a nation on its own, and that would be a loophole. That would be a loophole, which is interesting. Just like space right now, there's a big deal about space because people are talking about, and of course they're always talking about Russia, 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 my Russians shooting up weapons into space to just sit there and wait and just launch on us when we least expect it, which they said they're not. And we probably are all doing things like that, to be honest.
Yes,
we
if they're
probably
doing
all
it,
have
we're
these things
doing
in
it.
space.
We probably had it up in space first. Are you serious?
I bet there's like so many countries that have autonomous little laser things up in space that either don't work or they do work and they're not telling them it. And it's just, it's one of those things that everybody does, but nobody talks about. Right.
Speaking of the stuff in space, I actually heard that where they launched the nuke into the ionosphere, there was weird gravity distortions over that part of the ocean.
Well, that would make sense because you're dealing with nuclear changes to the ionosphere. Yeah. So that's going to affect everything below it and above it. As above, so below. You're going to affect both of those things.
And
so go ahead.
That kind of puts into perspective too. Remember a few episodes ago, we talked about the Indian Ocean having some gravitic anomalies. Mm-hmm. And, in India, we've talked about how there was the potential for nuclear weapon usage in the ancient past.
Rajasthan.
And they say that Antarctica is one of the areas on Earth that is the closest to space, the easiest to get into outer space travel.
They study neutrinos and things from there because there's no light pollution. There's no civilization blocking anything with radio signals.
There's no
or cell
pollutants
signals
going in the air either. So
it's the cleanest, most clean slate kind of place on the planet right now that actually has a landmass. You could go up to the Arctic Circle, but there's not really a landmass at the center of that. It's mostly ocean. So you have to go.
It's broken up of ice. The Arctic Circle is broken up of ice. So you're gonna you might be able to stand on one platform for a while, but that ice moves and then another sheet comes in. So you're constantly shifting. But in Antarctica, you don't have to shift because there's ground underneath it. There's literal ground underneath it.
Speaking of that, could I give off some facts about that real quick?
Yes, if you do.
Spit them out.
Yeah, hurry up. We ain't got all day.
Okay. So in Antarctica, they only have 2 inches of rain per year in Antarctica. So where did this 3-mile ice sheet of fresh water come from? All the ice across Antarctica can be as thick as 13,000 feet or 4 kilometers thick, nearly 1.5 times.
Hey.
He is.
He told me to spit it out.
Slow it down so we can all hear it. I did.
Wow.
I didn't realize this was comedy hour.
Wow.
Okay. So slowing it down, there are 13,000 feet or 4 kilometers thick in the ice across Antarctica. The entire size of Antarctica is nearly 1.5 times the size of the USA, double the size of Australia, 58 times the size of the UK, and covers 8.5 million square miles. There is an ice sheet 4.8 kilometers thick or 3 miles thick covering the top of Antarctica. It gets better. Antarctica contains 70% of Earth's fresh water, and 90% of that is ice. Yes, I said fresh water. That means it didn't come from the ocean.
Yeah.
The lowest temperature ever recorded on the entire planet was taken on Antarctica near Vostok, and it was negative 128 degrees Fahrenheit.
No.
Even that temperature, though, would not freeze a woolly mammoth, and if it melted, it would raise the sea level of the entire planet by about 230 feet. And the highest point on the Antarctic ice cap is 13,451 feet. And only about 0.4% of the surface of Antarctica is free of snow and ice. And to reiterate, there is only 2 inches of rain on Antarctica per year. It is dry, desert-like climate. Mm-hmm. So that's where I bring in my own conspiracy theory and the thing I'm most excited to mention.
All right,
where does all that water come from? If it's not from the rain, because they only get 2 inches a year, and it's not from the ocean surrounding the land, because that would be salt water, and this is fresh water. Where do you think all that water came from?
You think there's springs buried underneath the water that allow it to freeze? Like it goes from apart. Once it gets up high enough, it freezes. And obviously that freeze would attest to the longer landmass, right?
Mhm.
There's got to be water buried underneath. There has to be. If this used to be a lush civilization, or if it's an Atlantean type of thing,
that's what
I
I was
know.
getting at.
Yeah, I know you going. I know you going. I'm already there.
Yep.
I'm a million steps ahead.
Yep.
No, but if it once was a lush jungle, or if it was once a survivable area, say like the United States, you're gonna have lakes, you're gonna have rivers, you're gonna have all of these locations, and those would still exist if the water goes down far enough. Because how many, you said 3 miles of an ice sheet that sit on top of land, right? That just sit on top.
Sits on top of another ice sheet before you even get to the land.
So how many ice sheets are there? 2?
Yeah, 2 ice sheets before you even get to the land, and they're both like 4.8 kilometers or 3 miles thick.
So you got 6 miles of just pure ice.
Pure ice.
So yeah, there has to be. In my personal opinion, there's got to be fresh water sources underneath all that.
I think there is a common misconception about Atlantis. What if, rather than being an underwater civilization, what if it was an on-water civilization, and they discovered a way to use their technology to get aqueducts and irrigation systems to a point where they were living on the water? And they have a theory about why there are maps that show Antarctica being a forested region.
Gary Reese
map.
Yep. And the Orneus Phineas map as well.
Yep.
But here's the question. The map was made in 1530 based on earlier maps from the 1500s, and they have accurate aerial topography. How do they have accurate aerial topography in the 1530s or anywhere in the 1500s when we didn't even get on the oceans ourselves until like the late 1770s, early 1800s, and we didn't discover Antarctica for ourselves until 1828?
All right, let me ask your question and respond with another question.
Okay.
Why were the Nazca lines drawn, and why were they drawn to perfection?
That also is a very good question.
Why were the Nazca lines drawn, and why were they drawn to perfection? Because you can only see them from above. You can't see them just walking around.
So I'm wondering if it might have been an advanced civilization that somehow discovered air travel before we did.
Here's something that'll bake your noodle. What if we're not the most advanced civilization that has existed? What if we're just like a great value advanced civilization? Like, what if we're like bottom of the barrel advanced civilizations? Like we are the most basic of basic advanced civilizations that have existed. We barely scrape by as an advanced civilization because we can't do half the things that they said that could have been done.
James said, once again, the fallen.
Right. What about Chichen Itza? What about Pompoku? What about all these places where the blocks are so intricately woven and pushed together, you can't even put a credit card through them. You can't put the thinnest piece of paper through them because it won't go because they are wedged in perfectly. We can't even do that today, given modern marvels of what we have. What about all the heavy stones that were used to make the pyramids?
Actually,
you still can't reproduce that. Like me,
I did hear a theory on that, but it's going to sound really, really crazy.
Well, no.
All right.
That's what we do around here.
Yeah. All right. So here's the theory I heard on a random YouTube video. Full disclosure, just some random YouTube video.
Okay. We wanted to make it. Okay. All right. We're prepared. We're prepared.
They said that it may have been we learned to change our frequencies and we learned to use frequencies to unlock our telekinetic powers and use telekinesis to move the objects.
Now, I will say this, that's not too far off from what I think, but I don't believe it's anything of telekinesis.
Yeah.
I believe it's if you take 2 magnets and you have something in the middle, it's going to be a push-pull effect. Yes. Now, the guy that made Coral Castle in Florida, Edward Leedskalnin, he had a box and he could move these giant coral blocks that were tons and tons in weight. And he could spin it with his finger. He could do all these things with it. Somebody said that they saw him doing this with a box that he had. And the minute he saw that they were looking, he turned it off. I think, because everything has a frequency. Everything has a frequency. Whether you believe anything we've said so far on the show tonight or not,
we could do a whole episode about
frequency. Has a frequency. We have done
matter is merely energy condensed into a slow vibration.
And if you know how to manipulate those vibrations, you can do wonders. Spider was telling us, I think it was you that told us, I don't know. There's a lot of people that tell me things, that if you could phase through the wall,
Yeah,
you would get an A for the class.
Yeah, we talked about that last week, I think.
If I'd have been you, I'd have been like, first of all, I want a lot more than an A. No, sir.
I want to graduate today. Give me the diploma. I'm out.
And I want money. I want to be able to take care of my family. But and electromagnetics are the key to everything. That's why all things that are negative vibrate at lower frequencies, while all things that are positive vibrate at higher frequencies. This isn't something that I'm like, I'm going to land my chakras later and get my star crystals. And no, I'm not one of them. All right. However, it has been scientifically proven that if you talk to plants in a positive manner, they seem to grow better. Come on. Like, I just, let's go one better. It's been scientifically proven that if you talk to people in a positive manner, they tend to react better than if you go to somebody and tell them that, something about them looks nice or looks respectable. Now, go up to somebody and tell them they look like absolute garbage and see which one gets you punched in the mouth.
As a person I know from high school once said, and he said it many times, if you smack somebody over the head often enough for long enough, they will eventually become depressed.
Damn, he's not wrong.
It's not wrong. It's an extreme example, but still.
I have clinical depression.
If you get beaten up over the head, if you get beaten down so often, you're going to get depressed about it.
See, but if you were like, there's a difference between positive reinforcement does wonders. So, I mean, we totally went off track on Antarctica and Antarctica. But no, I think that what we're seeing, Antarctica could be a part of Atlantis, though I think Atlantis probably sits more in the Sahara than I do the Antarctic area. But that doesn't mean that Antarctica wasn't a whole other landmass that still existed that we don't know anything about.
Have you heard about the polar shift?
Is this the Adam and Eve theory?
No.
Is this the Adam and Eve theory?
This has been a big topic over the last several years. A lot of people have been talking about it.
Let me say this. The Adam and Eve theory states that the cataclysms that Adam and Eve went through when they were removed from the garden was because how did this happen? Basically, the poles shifted. So the North Pole became the South Pole. The South Pole became the North Pole. It caused this great upheaval. So I'm wondering, because that's been something that I've been looking into. The Adam and Eve theory is very interesting. Not that I buy into it, but
the theory I wanted to mention actually involved a meteor. The theory
is this Final Fantasy all over again? Because listen,
yes, it is 100%. So
damn it! Did Sephiroth?
I love that game.
Yes.
Did Sephiroth do this?
Yes. The theory was there was a large impact event, and a meteor hit the Earth, and it caused such a great disturbance, like when it killed off the dinosaurs. It caused such a great disturbance that the crust separated from the mantle, and there was a 7.5 degree polar shift where the pole shifted, and Antarctica floated to where the South Pole is now. And as soon as the landmass hit the South Pole and that vast change in temperature, it flash froze everything instantaneously. And that's why they believe the civilization is buried under the ice.
Now, continuing on that, it's the potential for that could have been repeated, because in the early 2000s, and I never really know the date. I look it up every time and I always forget the date. But there was a series of earthquakes, I think in the Indian Ocean, when I was younger, probably in my early 20s.
Is this what caused the tsunami in Fiji?
Yeah, it caused these massive tsunamis, and it caused a lot of damage, but it also caused the entire planet, to wobble on its axis. Like, they didn't say it got to a permanent change, but it wobbled. And at the time, they said, we have no idea what future changes this could cause to our planetary environment. Like, things could, who knows? And then they forgot about it, and nobody's ever talked about it since. But things have been different since then. Like, seasons have changed, weather has been different. It's a definite example of what happens when some disaster happens on the planet and the planet reacts.
We didn't know how. I mean, that was very much an emboldened speech, my friend. It's a wonder.
I always like everybody always gets that stunned silence when I finish with that. They're just like,
all right.
Okay,
sir, this is a Wendy's. Do you want the Baconator or not?
Yes, I do. Hold the cheese, please.
Have either one of you heard of Spartan 1?
What now? What, Steven?
Spartan 1. Have you heard of that one?
Is that the Halo? Is that the Halo game?
Funny that you mentioned it because it is the same code name. Yes, it is the same code name. That's why I was able to remember it so easily. But it's a military man, and long story short, because we're running out of time, but basically he found a black pyramid in the Antarctica, and he claims that when he got inside, even though it was 40 degrees below zero outside, the inside of this giant structure, about 9 acres poking out of the ice, was 68 to 72 degrees on the inside, and there were green lights emanating from the walls, but they couldn't find a light source. And they found a ramp going down further into the area, and by the time they had finished exploring everything underneath the ice, it turned out to be 62 acres or 2.7 million miles in its full entirety.
Wait a minute. 67 acres.
I feel like that would
equals out to 2 million miles. I think there's an error in
mathematics. I probably did.
I feel like that's wrong. A lot of miles.
Okay,
I feel like there's more. I'm like 60. Like 67 acres. Like, yeah, okay, it's gonna
that's
be
a lot of miles.
You know what? Hold on. We're gonna end here. This is something that's very interesting. I have read that was it Neil Armstrong supposedly went to Antarctica as well?
I heard about that. Yeah, I was actually listening to a podcast earlier, and they do like remote viewing, and they said they did remote viewing on that. I don't know if you believe in that or not.
So. Yeah, you are way off.
Okay.
So correct 67 me, acres would equal about 0.10 square miles.
Okay, yeah. Thank you for correcting me. That was a big mistake.
You're fine. So that's square miles. So yeah, so that's square miles. So it's 0.10 square miles.
James brings up a good point. What do you think all the empty sockets in the Great Pyramid were for? Holding lights? I've always wondered if they were for maybe like holding urns for ashes or something.
But like the Great Pyramid wasn't for the deceased. The deceased were buried, unless the only other thing, like if we would have we would have like a normal, like non-conspiratorial or non-like thing. The only thing I could think the pyramids were built for was more or less a bait and switch. Like, yeah, they might be buried here. Then they bury them in the tomb of the pharaohs on the whole other part of the thing. The Valley of the Pharaohs, the Valley of the Kings. They put them there, but they built the pyramids to make tomb robbers. They put some golden things in the tomb robbers to rob. But then they put the pharaohs in the Valley of the Kings. And I still think
nice save on the copyright there. Nice save on the copyright. I caught that.
Yeah. Don't want to get sued, my friend. You know?
I'm not just here so I don't get sued.
I'm just here so I don't eat food. There it is. But yeah, I think those sockets in the Great Pyramid that you're talking about could be for holding lights, could be for holding torches, could be for a plethora of things, could be for energy distribution, because the pyramids were built over, well, they think that the pyramids are built over water and on granite and had a gold capstone. Electricity conducts through all of those things: water, granite, and then the gold capstone at the top. So there you go. Great conductors of electricity. You have a power plant. The pyramids, to me, if I had to be one of those people, which I kind of am, I would say the pyramid was more an energy source than it was a burial chamber. Why would you bury the dead in such an elaborate thing when you could bury the dead off in a valley? You know? The Valley of the Kings, there's a reason to name. But I also think that maybe some pyramids had the dead in them, because there were a lot of pyramids, and there's a lot of pyramids scattered all over the earth. Pyramids just were not an Egyptian thing.
The difference as far as the Egyptian one goes is that as far as the Great Pyramids are concerned, there were no bodies in any
None.
of the Great Pyramids.
Not one.
Whereas some of the I don't want to say the knockoffs, but the ones that were much smaller
Yeah.
and constructed differently,
Like the bent pyramid of Djoser.
those were
Djoser,
different, but those could
Yeah.
have been, in tribute and be like, oh yeah, these
Yeah.
are supposed to be tombs, so on my tomb. But none of the Great Pyramids ever had bodies
Not one.
located within them
They've
of any
never
kind.
found
No
a single
remains.
solitary body.
All
No
of those
remains.
remains have been in the Valley of the Kings, because the Valley of the Kings was the acknowledged place where you buried your rulers. You
Yes.
didn't bury your rulers in the Great Pyramids.
That's not to say that one of these pharaohs didn't come in, get all full of themselves. So you know what? I want to be buried in a pyramid. Which, listen, to them, and this is just me speaking, to them, the pyramids could have been a trashy thing. You don't want to be buried in a pyramid. That's trashy. That's where we conduct energy. Why would you want to be buried in a place where we conduct energy? The energy
being buried in a battery.
Yeah. You know what I mean? I would be interested to test the water underneath the pyramid to see if it has traces of different minerals and things like that. Ah. Ah. Yes. Very interesting. I'm telling you, it all connects.
Many colors.
It all connects. His coat was styling. He was styling on him.
Many colors.
He was styling on him. Yeah. That's. There's just too many occurrences and things that have happened in our society for me to believe that what they tell us is considered to be fact, because I don't believe it to be considered fact in the first place.
Never take anything at face value. Always do some back checking. Even just
don't
basic
trust the
facts.
government,
Sometimes
kid.
you need to do some back checking. And if it jives,
Yes.
great. If it doesn't,
even
file
better.
it away.
Do back checking on your back checking on your back checking.
Facts
Absolutely.
upon facts upon facts upon facts.
Yes.
That's what we get over here. Anyways, that's it tonight for me, and of course Spider, and of course, who's this again? Oh, that's right, Steven
the intern.
Steven the intern. That means
There we go.
That means we could beat him up and go back and give us coffee and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, Steven, go get some coffee, Steve.
Hey,
like a bunch of jerks. Oh, he froze. We'll give you college credit.
Join our slavery program.
Well, I'm not going to do it. My legs are broken. There you go.
Thank you, James.
We appreciate you as always. We appreciate everybody that came out tonight. Thank you so much. Share this with your friends, with your family. They'll probably think you're crazy, but we're all a little crazy, so why not be crazy with us, right? We say the things that most people are afraid to say because we don't care what most people think. So, if you would like to get more information, by all means, contact us at thisuncanny@gmail.com for all your questions, concerns, articles, news clippings, whatever you want to send us. As long as it isn't anything that'll get us in trouble with a alphabet agency, by all means, please. We don't like alphabet agency stuff, so you can, however, we appreciate each and every one of you. We love each and every one of you. Thank you all for coming out. You guys are freaking awesome. We are blessed to have all of you as an audience. Thank you so much. Join us next week. We will have Steven back again, as long as he gets our coffee right. I know he's not good at getting Spider's coffee order right.
As long as he passes his citizenship test.
But to be fair, Spider's coffee always comes with whiskey, and it's hard to get whiskey at 8:30 in the morning.
That is true.
There's Japanese for you guys. I don't know what he said. He probably said beans and toast. That's all I know. Anyways, you guys have a good night. Have a good day. Whatever it is, whatever you do. As always, why be boring when you can be uncanny? We will see you folks next week. Peace. I gotta end the stream. I didn't end the stream.
Hit the button.
I gotta end the stream.
That button right there.
I just hit it.